Good morning, Vandal fans. Welcome to another edition of Fourth and Downtown. I'm your host, Josh Grissom, and I'm joined with Luis the Godfather Torres this Sunday morning. We're going to talk a little bit more about the impact of the Idaho Vandals' decision to move to the Big Sky Conference as a football member in 2018. We'll also provide you with some updates as far as the men's and women's tennis tournaments are concerned. Both of those postseason tournaments are in Sacramento, California, and both the men's and the women's programs here at the University of Idaho have reached the championship round. Also, we're going to be covering the men's golf team. They're in action today. I believe last time I checked, they were trailing Sacramento State by 3 strokes, so we'll see if they're able to catch up to them during our program. But first, Luis, obviously, we talked a lot about this Friday. President Staben announced that Idaho football will join the Big Sky Conference in 2018. I know there's a lot of thoughts from both sides. There's a deep division among Vandal fans. That's very apparent. Talking to not only fans but reporters and everyone involved in the program as well, athletes. It was a tough situation, and I think no matter what President Staben decided to do, he would have gotten flack either way. I feel like.
Yeah, he would have gotten flack either way. So it was like a lose-lose situation as far as him announcing it. But there's some that are rejoicing whether or not they fully know what this decision means as far as finances and all that stuff, including scholarships. But he was in a lose-lose situation and has led to a massive uproar, even to this day, and I don't think it will go away for Staben. I think many people say that will be his legacy for however long he'll be as the campus president.
For those of you who didn't hear, and it would have been very hard not to hear somehow, President Staben announced that the Vandals would join the FCS. Right now we are in the FBS, the Football Bowl subdivision, and we're going to move to the Football Championship subdivision, FCS. That's a huge deal because most of the time when you watch college football on TV Saturday, you're watching FBS teams. You're watching programs that will eventually end up in a bowl game at the end of the year. FCS is completely different. These teams are considered a lower subdivision, and they play in a playoff at the end of the year. And the Big Sky Conference has one guaranteed playoff spot for its members, whoever is the conference champion. But sometimes a second member will get in based on reputation. Now, when I talked to Big Sky Commissioner Doug Fullerton Tuesday, he said that the addition of the Vandals would allow for the potential for a two-league, 7-team divisions within the Big Sky Conference. So that way they're playing for 2 automatic bids and potentially a 3rd or 4th for the playoffs if you have some very successful teams. I thought it was an interesting move. I know some people have suggested, well, maybe the Big Sky Conference is amping up to try and move one of those divisions to the FBS. I'm not quite sure how feasible that is. When I talked to Fullerton, he said that was not a priority right now. He just wants some more spots for his teams in the Big Sky Conference. But it was a unique thought nonetheless, I feel.
Right now, it's one of those things that you pretty much, whatever you want, whatever they were considering, like you mentioned, Fullerton said it's not a main priority. I don't think it should be a priority at this very moment because you have one team that is just gonna be in the Big Sky in 2018, and then there's the possible talks of moving one division into the FBS. I think that's a lot to handle, considering that Fullerton will no longer be the commissioner by summer, I think. But this summer, because they have announced a new commissioner. You want to add on to that new commissioner announcement that
Yes.
was released a couple days? In fact, almost like I think the day after or the same day the decision was made for Idaho to move to the Big Sky.
That was, I believe it was announced Friday. Andrea Williams was named the new Big Sky Conference Commissioner by the President's Council. She said, quote, "I'm thrilled to have been selected as the next commissioner of the Big Sky Conference, and I'm excited to guide the league into the next era of academic and athletic achievement. I'm grateful to the President's Council and the Selection Committee for the opportunity to work with an outstanding group of institutions that prioritize the student-athlete experience in higher education. End quote. She will replace retiring Commissioner Doug Fullerton on July 1st. Fullerton served with served as the head of the conference for 21 years, I believe. So, guess he joined when the Vandals left the program, and he's leaving and retiring when the Vandals will rejoin the Big Sky Conference. So I thought that was a unique tidbit from, I guess, from the whole the news.
It all goes in full circle, I guess.
So yeah, Andrea Williams. I haven't heard too much about her, but I know she's fairly young. It's probably a good hire by the Big Sky Conference. I don't know what her direction will be moving forward, but I feel like she definitely had to have been involved with the decision by the Big Sky Conference. I know Fullerton is the one who initially has been pushing for this year after year to try and get us to rejoin the conference, but I feel like the fact that he didn't know the news when I called him Tuesday and the university leaked the news Wednesday, I feel like perhaps maybe he was not involved in this decision as much as people believe, and maybe it might have been the new successor who helped push the Vandals through the door and into the conference again.
Yeah, the fact that he wasn't aware of what's going on, it kind of shows that they were not really expecting much of an announcement right away. I knew that once the initial announcement that they were no longer going to their contract with the Sun Belt was not going to be renewed, that they had until like before the end of the year, the end of this semester, to make the decision at the very earliest. And the fact they were able to do it before May kind of shows that they pretty much had this in mind all along from our campus's point, that it caught the Big Sky by surprise, which I find it honestly surprising because they were the ones that were trying to get us back to the Big Sky. We had like an open invitation for an X amount of days or X amount of months to make the announcement. And now that this announcement was made without Fullerton being highly aware of what's going on, kind of shows that anything can happen. And I think in some sense he wished that he knew right away in advance that they were going to make the decision rather than find out from you or other people that Idaho are considered to join.
Yeah, and the move, I was looking into this a little more in depth. I know a lot of outlets have claimed this is the first time that any program has dropped down from the FBS to the FCS. Not exactly true. I believe there was Yale and McNeese State or something back in 1979 who 1982, I believe, actually, voluntarily, there was a thing with their conference affiliation. The conference wanted to stay down, but the teams were considered up, and they purposely stayed within their conference and moved down with them. So this would be the first instance of a modern football program dropping from FBS to FCS, just so fans are aware of that. It's not the first time ever, but and looking at some of these other programs, Luis, New Mexico State, University of Massachusetts, a couple of other, right now, programs contemplating independence. I feel like a lot of programs around the country were looking at Idaho to see what we did, because we're kind of we're near the bottom of the FBS as far as revenue and prestige and relevance, but I feel like there's a number of other programs who are down there with us who are kind of in the same position, wondering what we would do, and I feel like our decision to move down to the FCS might actually spark a number of other programs to do the same thing, essentially.
I think if they want to find a way to make their program better, and they have not had much success in the FBS like they would have wanted, they probably would look at our decision, except records and performance aside, find ways to kind of make their program profitable in their eyes. But obviously there's the option of going independent or going to the FCS or finding another conference. But the independent route for some does not work, because you're asking to play teams that are a little bit out of your league, or trying to find a team that is within your league to do well. And the worst case scenarios would be what happened with Alabama Birmingham a couple of years ago, folding, or even Western Washington almost a decade ago. It's kind of hard to imagine that Western Washington has not had a football program in almost a decade. But those are two prime examples that could be the worst case scenario, but I don't think it'll likely happen for New Mexico State and UMass either. I think they will find options, and if they want to go down to the FCS, then by all means, that's their decision.
First, they have to get an invite to a conference, and that's something New Mexico State has not gotten yet. So I know the Big Sky Conference, or actually President Staben during his press conference actually made a very interesting remark. He said he was talking about the Big Sky Conference considering other members, and I found the quote. He says, quote, "As you may know, the Big Sky is considering a number of members. At this point, Idaho has essentially a guaranteed acceptance into the Big Sky pending the State Board of Education approval." End quote. I'm wondering if one of those members that the Big Sky was discussing was New Mexico State, if Idaho did not initially accept the invitation. I'm wondering if there might have been some inner workings in the conference where they said, hey, if you guys don't take this, I know we gave you a soft deadline, but if you guys don't take this, we're going to reach out to New Mexico State. And then maybe that is what prompted the push and the decision early, and the fact that there was no request for a contract or for a deadline extension for the Vandals. I think that was odd, and maybe that was the reason why it occurred.
I think that, like I mentioned, if they did it earlier, it'll be feasible for Idaho. And the fact that they had an open invitation, but also kind of a reminder that if you got the sooner the better, you're most likely going to end up being in a conference. So that's where Idaho had the advantage the entire time. Is they had almost an instant invitation to join the Big Sky Conference, but then it took some time to think about it, and they didn't do it. They didn't rush it, but they did it just before their soft deadline were to occur.
Yeah, so that was really interesting to hear. Another thing that was surprising, I think, first off, that it was said, and then second off, that there was no explanation given, was the fact that Idaho Athletic Director Rob Spears said that a women's program at the university would not get cut as a result of the scholarship change, which I thought was very, very interesting and a powerful statement to make when 2 years before Spear had said that a move down would result in the loss of maybe not one but two women's sports. So I don't know what they're talking about doing that would save scholarships for the women's sport. But okay, so here's the situation right now. Title IX legislation initially created for women to help them receive the same proportion of scholarships, athletic scholarships, as men, which is awesome, great for that. But here's a situation where it doesn't quite work. The move to the Big Sky Conference would cut down the number of football scholarships for our program from 85 to 63. Now, that normally that would be it, but Title IX says that gender proportions have to be somewhat equal to the student proportion on campus. So let's just say, for instance, it's 50-50. So 50% of the campus is men, 50% of the campus is women. And let's say each side has 150 scholarships. I don't know the exact number, but let's just say that's it. So you have 150 men's scholarships, 150 women's scholarships. The loss of 22 scholarships on the men's side is going to drop them from 150 to 128. Now you have a disproportionate number of scholarships because now the women have 150 scholarships compared to the men who have 128. So Title IX is huge on gender equality. So in this situation, it would hurt the women's side as well because they would be forced to figure out some way to reduce their scholarships amount until it reached 128. Now, whether that's they cut a number of full scholarships in half, and then they try and, two athletes now share a full scholarship together, and they try and work with it that way. I don't know, but 22 scholarships. When you look at that number 22, that's essentially the roster of a number of sports teams on campus, and that looked like the easiest way for the athletic department to approach the issues, to just cut a sport all together.
Yeah, it's just a mess at this point. That they're gonna have to figure it out. how they're going to make it proportion, how they're going to balance it with all the other women's sports out there, kind of to make it relatively even and fair as far as how many scholarships will be given out by each sport. And right now, it's just a hot mess that should be hopefully taken care of before August, or even the sooner the better. I think this needs to be adjusted as soon as possible before 2018. I think the sooner the better will help. Not do it like very late 2017 because that's where the problems may endure.
Now, if we look at the situation right now, Spear said the Vandals will be at 63 football scholarships in 2018, so that way they can immediately compete for the playoffs in the Big Sky Conference. I know before Fullerton had proposed maybe a hybrid schedule, giving the Vandals time to shift down and play both FBS and FCS opponents over a 2-year time frame. But Spear said that the program would transition over 2 years and would be at 63 scholarships in 2018. So I'm guessing the way they're going to do that is they're going to cut 11 probably at the end of next year, and then cut another 11 the following year, so that way they're at 63. And I would assume they have to go for the same on the women's side as well, 11 and then 11.
Yeah, that would have to be pretty balanced. And right now, it's just gonna have to figure it out and be concise and kind of be fair with everyone as best as possible. It's not going to be easy to reduce scholarships to make it even within the men's and women's.
Yeah, and Spear would not go into the details of his plan. I know there was 2 or 3 questions posed by reporters to Spear on the topic, and he was very, very short, and a number of his quotes were essentially the same thing. I'm just going to paraphrase. He was like, we'll be at 63 scholarships in 2018. No, we will not cut a women's sport. And that was essentially all that he had to say on the topic. So I wish I could get some more details on Spear's plan, and I think we really won't get to see it until some of the budget sheets come out for the athletic department, and we can see exactly what is going on. But until then, I guess a lot of it is mystery and is up in the air, but we will see about that. Another thing that the program has to consider, and we talked about this before, Luis, is revenue games against Power 5 opponents. The Vandals have, this is from 2018 on, so technically when they are in the Big Sky Conference, they have games against Florida, LSU, Missouri, and then 2 games against Indiana in back-to-back years, both on the road. The payout of each matchup is over $1 million per game. Now, that's a lot of money. You're looking at least $5 million right there with those, and it's probably higher, at least more like 6.5, 7. Now, when you're looking at those games, there's a contract, and some of the contracts don't have anything as far as a change in conference affiliation for either program. It was assumed that the Vandals would still be in the FBS at that time. So if Florida or Missouri or somebody is to cancel a contract, the Vandals would get a nice payout. Not huge, but it would still be quite consistent for not playing any game at all. It would be very good for the program. But when those teams signed to play Idaho, they wanted to face an FBS opponent, because I believe as of right now in the NCAA rules and regulations that only one FCS victory is counted towards a team's overall record. So Florida can very easily play some sort of FCS program in their own state, and then get a win for that. And then if they play the Vandals again, the win means nothing for the team at all. So I can see why a number of these programs would cancel the game. It's a little scary for Idaho as a whole, because they will make some money, but they won't quite make as much as they initially thought they would based on those contracts. And what do you feel about that, Luis?
I think with Florida, in Florida, here's why I'm focusing on Florida a bit. It's, to me, if they were to cancel the game that was supposed to be played 2 years ago, but rain and the storms and the heavy thunderstorms, they canceled the game for 2017, I believe. I think, to me, they, after only one play, if Florida were to cancel it and not finish the whole game out, that was supposed to be done 2 years ago, but obviously the weather was not on their side. to me, it's kind of pointless. I don't know if I think Florida. I'm not sure how their memory span is for when it comes to that game. I think honestly, Florida should try to finish the game that they kind of started after, well, even if it was one play. So that one, I kind of see pointless and silly that they would cancel it. But it would not surprise me at the same time if they do. But the only reason why I find it silly is because they already had made a play down. Obviously, it's going to be completely restarted with different players and all that. I say that one would be silly to cancel. But the other ones, I can sense why they may do it because they were hoping to get an FBS team out of it so they could get a good record and also impress people in the AP polls because you got LSU and Indiana that, especially Indiana, that may slowly but surely growing to become a pretty darn good football team after what looked like a good start last year, and they kind of held on their own to be a fairly good team. I think in the next couple of years they may be an established team that could be top 25 ranked on a frequent basis. But I think if they were to cancel, obviously it will hurt us financially. We'll get some pay. But let's not forget some of the other teams we'll face as well that are not in our conference, or that are also FBS, like San Jose State as well. Those teams we played them in the past in the Western Athletic Conference. But what about those smaller FBS teams? Will they stick to it, or they cancel as well? That's another thing that I'm pondering about.
See, I feel like in that case, those smaller FBS programs would likely keep the game just because it could still count as a win. I think it would be a lot harder for San Jose State to get an FCS program to agree to play them as it would be Florida. Because you look at, for instance, like an FCS program looking at mulling like two potential options as far as games. They're like, oh, well, we can play another FCS team or we can play Florida where they're going to have 60 to 80,000 people in the stands. That's great exposure for our program, even though we're getting beat. We get a lot of money. We get a significant amount of money from the matchup compared to the FCS game. So we would much rather play at Florida. Now, in the case of like San Jose State, they're not as prominent. They're not as big, so it's a little bit tougher for them to reach out for FCS teams, get them to agree to a game like that. And isn't it a home and home series?
A SIG is 1 year at San Jose, and then the next here in Moscow, or the other way around.
So it is a home and home series. Yeah. So I feel like in that instance, no, they wouldn't change it because they would still get paid to come up here to face Idaho, which that game I'm not sure if that will get canceled.
I personally don't think. I think for the smaller ones, I don't think it'll happen. For the big ones, like maybe LSU, they may probably go with that route because they are one of those top teams in the SEC. Florida have been hit or miss, but mostly hit sort of these days. That I think they may stick it out. Honestly, I think they should personally because they already had a play. They played 2 years ago and kind of finished out the game that really never was from 2014. So just kind of get through it, and then they get a nice hefty pay for, who knows, that may be the only one. But as far as Indiana is concerned, that one, I think maybe they'll keep one and drop the other. I think that I would not be surprised if that happens.
Yeah, and a lot of it's going to have to do with the schedules of those opponents. So does Florida State already have another FCS team? Or sorry, not Florida State, but does Florida already have another FCS team scheduled during that same year? Does Missouri? Does Indiana? So those are the questions that are unanswered right now. And I feel like it could be very easy for those big programs to drop the Vandals, but for some of those smaller programs, like Fresno State, San Jose State, probably not a huge drop, but we will see. But yeah, the revenue is certainly a huge aspect of that move. And also, I guess we can shift our attention now to the boosters. I know a number of Vandal Scholarship Fund chapters were very outspoken about the move, particularly the Ada County chapter and the Puget Sound chapter. Both wrote separate letters to President Stabin that went public a few weeks ago. I initially covered the story, and then I called the president of the Ada County chapter, and he was very open about discussing the fact that he thought the prestige and kind of the relevance of the football program defined the university as a whole, and he felt like it was very important for the Vandals to remain FBS status to appeal to students, which would help in the classroom as well as getting some outstanding student athletes. And I kind of see the point in that when you consider, I guess from my perspective, when I looked at colleges, I initially considered ones with good football programs because I'm like, I enjoy football, I enjoy the sport. That's something I want to be involved with on my campus in one form or another. And right now I'm writing on football, which is an awesome opportunity and perhaps a dream job of mine. But for if this were to come up like 5 years down the road, if I was to go back in time and all of a sudden like the Vandals are in the Big Sky Conference, I go, oh, well, they're not as big of a program as like Washington State, just right down the road. Why wouldn't I rather just go to a bigger program that has a legit, not legit, but an FBS status football team that I could get behind and support, whereas the FCS team now, who's really heard of all of the members in the Big Sky Conference? Obviously, we do because we cover the sports that play in the Big Sky Conference, such as tennis, soccer. But yeah, it's an interesting scenario as far as appealing to high school students as a whole.
Yeah, that's how I was the same way. But for me, it was a tad bit unrealistic that I was going to get into these schools. Because back in the day, I was looking heavily on, like, a little bit on Penn State, but heavily on USC, Southern California, because of the football program they had. And I've always been heavily critical about certain things that they go about. But then after a while, once I got a little bit more realistic-minded, I decided to go where what best suits me. And obviously I ended up with schools that usually are not known, or somewhat have a football program that are good, but I didn't have some decisions I defined it by the football program, but at the very end, I didn't let it define it all that much, and to be quite honest, because I was thinking where academically I could end up doing pretty well, and it ultimately led me to be right around here. It was either going to be here, Washington State, or even in Ithaca, New York, rather than the ones that I thought like USC, Penn State, and all of that. And during my time, those were some hectic times to be for the football program with the Sandusky case in Penn State, and also with USC with the whole Reggie Bush situation. So it was a rough couple of years that both schools had, and it kind of hindered my decisions. But ultimately, and from a realistic standpoint, I decided to focus on where I best fit, where realistically I could be accepted on an institution, just as here at the University of Idaho.
Now, do you feel like these chapters had a point? I know one of the things that they said in the letter was that if the Moscow community does not have an FBS program to support, they will drive 8 miles down the road and spend their money in their season tickets on the Washington State Cougars instead. Do you feel like there's a legitimate point to that, or were they just grasping for something to catch Stablin's attention in the letter, and they didn't obviously catch it?
I say it's an imposing strategy. Like if you don't listen to us, we'll single-handedly just go down the road and just support the other team instead, to prove a point. It's kind of like they're making a statement, like they're trying to make a point of what they're doing. Honestly, I don't know how legit it could happen. Honestly, I don't know how legitimate it'll happen. But I think they're just saying that to make a point, to kind of scare off, to kind of impose that you should listen to the boosters. Otherwise, money will drop like flies if you make in their eyes the wrong decision.
Now, here's what I think about the situation. I think for the average fan, no, they won't go to Washington State to spend their money just because they're in the community already, and they probably already know about the Vandals and the whole situation. I feel like for the more intense football fan, yes, I could see them moving their monies over to Washington State so that way they can follow a powerhouse team in the Pac-12. But if you're talking about just kind of the average fan, the so-so fan, the fan who goes once or twice every year, I think they stay in the Moscow community, just because I think the Kiwi Dome is appealing in the fact that you don't have to deal with the terrible weather. of the Palouse in the late stages of the fall and winter, because that's not fun. But yeah, I still think that there will be some support for Vandal football. I know we kind of struggle to fill out the dome already. I don't think it'll be a huge drop in numbers as far as the crowd goes. I think there will be some games where we do see an increased attendance as far as like our rivalry with Montana, but we will have yet to see that. So in a few years we will see that. Right now we have to pause real quick for station promo. Don't go anywhere. This is Fourth and Downtown on KUOY 89.3 FM Moscow. Welcome back to Fourth and Downtown on KUI 89.3 FM Moscow. I'm your host, Josh Grissom, joined with Luis Torres. And today we were talking about the impact of the Vandal football team moving to the Big Sky Conference from a fan's perspective. And I guess now we can talk a little bit more about the attitude of the boosters. I know a number of them have threatened to pull their funds, and you're already facing a lower amount of revenue generated from those Power 5 conference games if they are to opt out of their contracts. We're talking about what Florida, Missouri, LSU, and Indiana, and all those games being more than $1 million. But if they opt out, it's more like half of what they promised. So you're facing a lower amount of revenue from those games. You're facing some threatening moves from Vandal boosters as far as pulling their funds entirely from the program. Do you think they'll still go through with that after this move? Obviously there will be some, but just as far as the majority, do you feel like they will pull their monetary support of athletics at the University of Idaho?
Maybe football, but as far as other sports, I am not entirely sure. I think they may stick to it. But the way they're passionate is obviously an initial thought, but who knows, they're so passionate about it that they may stick to it and say, we're no longer going to support this camp, the school, or the team, but they feel so frustrated and angry. I can understand I can totally understand where they're coming from, but I would not be surprised if they actually will continue through the next couple of years. It honestly wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, and it'll put the athletic department in an even tougher spot if that were to happen. All of the money from the Vandal Scholarship Fund is supposed to go towards supporting student athletes, no matter what their sport is, on the campuses at the University of Idaho. So, and I know our football revenue, we didn't have a huge profit because football is a very expensive sport to maintain, but we did have some profit, and I know the large majority, if not all of the funds, went back into the athletic programs. So it's going to hurt, I think, a little bit financially for the first few years. I don't see any reason why we would be able to get out of joining the Big Sky Conference, scot-free without getting any sort of financial ramifications. But I think 10 years down the road, we could be in a good position, but in 2 or 3 or 4 years, I think we're going to be struggling a little bit, and a lot of people will be upset initially. But I think with some smart planning financially, we could be able to turn this into a positive situation.
We're just going to have to wait and find out what happens in the next few years. obviously for the two of us, it'll be a long past our time here on campus, but it'll be interesting to kind of pay attention once our days here are over within the next year. So it's gonna be one topic to kind of to ponder about.
Now, I know there was some rumors about the University of Idaho hiring a consultation firm to double check the uh, situation and discuss what was appealing as far as both sides of the table, FBS independence or the Big Sky Conference. And Staben said that the he confirmed reports that the university hired the consultant firm, and he said, quote, "We did hire an outside consultant and we received a consultant report. The results were consistent with what we have received in the past," end quote. I feel like in this situation, you could take whatever info that you get from the consultation report for either side and spin it your way. I feel like with facts, it's very, not facts, but statistics, it's very easy to tweak them and present them in a way, no matter what your feeling is, that you can uh, find an argument for your stance in the first place. And I feel like in this situation, there was information presented that were positives for both and negatives for both. And it would have been, I guess when he says it's consistent with what we have received in the past, I feel like he's just saying, like, yes, some of the information did support the Big Sky Conference, but maybe there was some information that supported FBS independence.
Yeah. And you're gonna have people that are gonna say we prefer this and we prefer that, and you're not gonna make people happy all the time, which is kind of the sad thing in life that you're not gonna you can't please everybody, and that's how it is. Not just in this situation, but in business in general. That some decisions work, some decisions don't. You're just either gonna have to find a way to whether or not accept it or continue to make your opinion heard, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, so we will have yet to see that. But yeah, just as a whole, uh, some very mixed opinions. The future, although we joined the Big Sky Conference to make it a little bit more clear, the future is somewhat murky as far as the exact details on how the university will proceed with this decision. So we have yet to really see exactly how this will all play out. But I'm sure over the next few months we will get a better feel for the situation. One thing I was very impressed with was with Coach Paul Petrino. Obviously, this decision has to be very, very difficult for him when he signed on. He signed on to take over an FBS program, and now they're talking about going to the FCS. And what's nice about his contract is that it ends, I believe, in 2017, so right before the move. But during the press conference, he handled himself very professionally and talked about how excited he was to join the Vandals during their transition. I thought that was kind of surprising. You know, he did sound somewhat upbeat and optimistic about it. But I think it'll be tough to see what exactly goes down with some of the athletes on the team. I know Staven said that the NCAA contacted him and informed him that normal student-athlete transfer rules still apply, so anybody who transfers the program now will have to wait a year at whatever other school they are at in the FBS if they want to still play. So I don't know if by that move the university will be able to keep football players in the program that otherwise would want to transfer. Do you feel like that at all?
I would not be surprised. Usually, when there's a huge announcement, whether it's moving down, moving up, being dropped, like the football program being dropped, or even in rare instances, a death penalty, there's gonna be people that are gonna transfer one way or the other. I think some people we haven't heard much on the player side from who are still on the team. Obviously, there's some that have used to play there and maybe not so pleased with the decision, but I'm more curious about what the players think. But I don't think we have ever emphasized or discussed about it. What do the players think? I think some will feel like they're going to be years when they're in the final years of the FBS era for Idaho, so they're not going to probably drop. Of those who are down the road that they know they're going to be FCS for at least 16, 17, 18, 19 for half the time, that could be a huge question mark whether or not they want to stay or not.
Now, somebody who I'm very interested to see the path that he takes is quarterback Jake Luton, because right now he's very talented, and it's tough because you have a good starter, a solid starter in Matt Linehan, who's going to be a junior next year. So by Linehan will leave the program at the end of their FBS status, and then if you were to assume that Linehan remains the starter uh, during that entire time, you're saying Luton takes over the program during the FCS era with only 1 year to direct the program. I don't know about you, but if I was in his position, I might be thinking of transferring. I don't know. I mean, we have to see. I've yet to talk to him, and I believe the media relations department will make sure that the players are prepped before they speak to the media at all. But yeah, I'm really interested to see how that plays out as far as his position, because I don't know what he will end up doing.
It'll be interesting, even though because there's only 1 year that he'll be able to do is what it appears to be. But let's not forget also the other quarterbacks that are also like Gunnar Amos or even the ones that were recently recruited. Where would they go?
Now, Gunnar Amos is the same year as Jake Luton, so I feel like he would be the backup if Luton were to remain with the program at that time, just because I feel like Luton's arm and his growth this spring really puts him heads and tails above the rest of the other quarterbacks right now. That's definitely somebody you want to keep within the program. And I think maybe what's stopping him from transferring is the fact that the current student-athlete transfer rule where they have to sit out a year at whatever other program they transfer to.
Yeah, I'm more curious to hear what the players say. Obviously, we're not going to get it right away, other than the ones who used to play for Idaho. Obviously, they voiced their opinion on Twitter and all that. But right now, I'm more or less curious what the players think. From what I heard, it's been relatively positive. I'm not sure how specific it is at this very moment.
The Idaho Statesman actually ran an article with, I think it was 3 or 4 tweets from Vandal players who were very upset uh, at the news. I'll see if I can find the article and some of the tweets and the quotes of the players right now. But yeah, I thought initially some of the comments that were made by the players were somewhat negative. I mean, I've yet to see any public outs or like support for the Big Sky Conference move, but then again, I haven't seen too many tweets that were critical of the situation as a whole. I feel like the football teams have done a good job of keeping their emotions and their tweets under the radar, or just they aren't tweeting these situations. So I feel like that's a positive for the program, being able to keep from having the students express displeasure with Staben or with the situation. Because, I feel like initially there's a lot of anger and a lot of raw emotions in that situation. And so it was probably good that they all sat and waited for a couple days, because I feel like at that point you start to decompress and you're like, okay, we have to accept this. This is what's going to happen. How can we make this work?
Yeah, but obviously the upperclassmen, they don't need to worry about it, or the ones who had already played two or three seasons, they don't have to worry too much. But it's those that are coming up and the ones who were freshmen this past season. Those are the ones I would keep an eye on the most. What they say, I think personally.
So a couple of the I found the article. A couple of these members, we have Justin Podrabski, a former tight end with the program, said, "Sad day for Vandal football. Disappointing to see we have a president who is narrow-minded and unwilling to fight for the team. Hashtag fire Staben." So some strong words for former alumni. We have Alex Boatman, who's currently the long snapper of the program, saying that the choice to send the Big Sky will be a huge mistake. We have Buck Cowan, who mocked the fact that the university would likely have to drop 22 women's scholarships instead. It's really going to enhance the student-athlete experience. And then former NFL player Mark Schlereth actually said that it was great news for the program and that he was very supportive of the Big Sky decision. So I thought that was cool to see not only a former Vandal and former NFL player, but a former Super Bowl champion as well voice public support for the decision to move to the Big Sky Conference. So we have another quick promo reel here coming up. Don't turn that dial. You are listening to Fourth and Downtown on KUOI 89.3 FM Moscow. And we're back. This is Fourth and Downtown on KUOI 89.3 FM Moscow. We were just talking about the decision for the Idaho football team to rejoin the Big Sky Conference in 2018. It will mark 22 years apart from the conference. Then they'll rejoin. A lot of opinions, a lot of thoughts on the topic and issue as well. And we will shift our attention to now the Big Sky postseason tournament for men's and women's tennis. Those are going on right now. Both the men's and the women's programs reached the championship. On the women's side, the Vandal women beat Sacramento State 4-2 in Saturday's semifinal to advance to the championship game. It's always great to defeat not only a higher seeded team, but also defeat them on their own home court that they're hosting the tournament. So that was really cool to see. Looking at some of the results, Mariana Petrie just continued to dominate against Big Sky Conference opponents with a 6-2, 6-3 win on the number one court. Rita Bermudez, strong win from her on the numbers 2 court to defeat Jennifer Ong 6-3, 4-6, 6-1. I think anytime that Bermudez is able to provide a point in singles play is a huge lift for the Vandals. We had a loss on the number 3 court. Anna Batiri fell 6-3, 6-4. The number 4 court did not finish because the Vandals had already clinched the victory, but Maria Tavares is the one who sealed the deal with a 6-1, 6-2 win on the number 6 court after the Vandals earned the doubles point. So they are currently in action right now against Northern Arizona in the championship, and they lead 1-0 after securing the doubles points. Rita Bermudez and Maria Tavares claimed a victory on the doubles court, as well as Lucia Badillos and Mariana Petrie. So the women are up early. Good to see that. The doubles point is something that Coach Mariana Cobra has really been pushing for the program for quite some time, and to see it pay off here in tournament time is a great thing.
I think it's very crucial that they're doing it at the very right time. Right at this moment, they're leading. No updates has been mentioned as far as singles play. Obviously, after women's will be the men's championship, which Idaho is also involved. They're facing Weber State, which Idaho has beaten before. But obviously, another thing to keep in mind, I don't think it has bothered them, is that the opening, yesterday they played indoors due to bad winds and all that. But today they're playing outdoors, so I think it's a different atmosphere, but I don't think it'll be much of a factor. But right now, if we were to get a double championship, I think that would be huge for the program after everything that's gone on this week with Vandal Athletics.
Yeah, it'll be a good morale boost, kind of after some of the criticisms of the athletic department as a whole. And both these teams are in very good position to be able to do that. And also, just got this update. The Vandal men's golf team is now in the lead. They're leading Sacramento State by 2 strokes. All the teams are through 9 right now, so they head to the back 9, so the final 9 holes of the tournament with a 2-stroke lead. I know they began the day, I believe, 4 strokes back from Sacramento State. Sorry, 3 strokes back from Sacramento State. So really cool to see perhaps maybe a triple championship in one day. That would be absolutely incredible. You have the men's and the women's and the men's golf team all take their respective championships. It'd be quite the weekend, quite the trifecta.
Yeah, and also be a sweep for not only golf, tennis, and golf because of the women's team also won. So it'll be a sweep from those 2 sports. So it'll be a triple. It'll be a triple champ. It could be a triple championship day for the Vandals. We're gonna have to wait to find it out. Obviously, through Twitter at Vandal Nation, and also in the Argonaut, coming to an Argonaut near you. 199.99% chance it'll be on Tuesday. So make sure you picked it up. Or also follow Twitter for the latest updates, either on the Big Sky's Twitter account or on Vandal Nation's Twitter account.
Yeah, we will be updating those matchups as soon as we hear anything at all about them. So, but yeah, it's great to see the men's tennis team and the men's golf team have some great success. They started the day trailing by 3 strokes. Now they have a 2-stroke lead. Some fantastic play down the stretch. If they could join our women's golf program with the championship, I feel like this would be a very successful year as a whole for the Vandal athletic department. Because you look at it and you say, okay, we have our men's basketball team finished the number 3 seed in the tournament after all those injuries. Football had a 4-8 year, somewhat of a breakout season, almost had a bowl eligibility, but just could not hold on there at the end. If you look on our women's side, we have our, first off, let's go back to track and field.
Yeah.
So many athletes having standout seasons for the program. Ben Ayusu-Ata looks like he could win some individual titles in the outdoor. Just fantastic as far as that is concerned. And then you look over at our women's sports, you have the basketball team being the Big Sky Conference champions. You have the soccer team earning a Big Sky regular season title. You have the women's golf team earning the Big Sky title. And then today, 3 other titles on the line. Could be an impressive addition to the trophy case.
Yeah, it's been a huge season for Vandal Athletics. I'd like to also add volleyball winning the North, being the top team in the North Division.
Oh, right, I forgot about that.
And the way they did it was also basic because I think and then the final 10 games, they were like mid-pack near the back of the bottom of the conference. Then they got on a huge roll down the stretch to get that number one seed in the North. And by a tiebreaker, no less. The way they did it as well. And it looks like they could have a promising season. But all around, even also in swim and dive with Janelle Lucas as well, having her share of success as a freshman. And kind of curious to see what happens with her and also the other teams and individuals moving forward going into the fall.
Yeah, it's been an impressive year for a number of our athletic programs, particularly those that we just mentioned.
And let's not forget also Elijah Penny signing with the Arizona Cardinals as well.
Oh, yeah. The NFL draft concluded Saturday. No Vandals were drafted in it at all, but Penny signed on with the Arizona Cardinals to attend their camp. Also, linebacker Chris Edwards announced that he will attend the rookie mini camp for the Seattle Seahawks later this week. I know he will join at least Vernon Adams of Oregon for the rookie mini camp. So hopefully, we wish those guys the best of luck. Also for Elijah Penny as well. Hopefully he'll be able to make the final roster for the team. But it's good to see him just initially be able to sign with a team that kind of struggled at the running back position with some of the injuries. They were forced to rely on David Johnson in the playoffs after a number of their other running backs went down with injuries. So he could provide a good fit for the team. We'll just have to see how training camp and all those things play out, and if he'll make the final roster for the Cardinals. But yeah, some good news as far as that is concerned for the football team and some of their former members. So Well, that's about all the time that we have for our program today. We want to thank you guys for tuning in. You can find all of the latest updates on our Twitter at Vandal Nation. We also have Facebook, Vandal Nation, very active on there as far as posting all of our content from our website, so be sure to check that out. You can also see us on Instagram, The Vandal Nation. You can see some of the assignments that our photographers have been shooting and some of the work that they have produced. Also, we are on Snapchat, The Vandal Nation. We're going to make that a little bit more active and get some good looks at some inside the sports here at the University of Idaho. It has to do with interviews and practices and games, just everything Vandal Athletics. You can find it on those platforms, but also be sure to pick up a copy of The Argonaut on campus or in your Moscow community. See the hard work that our writers have been putting in here late at the end of the semester, and I highly recommend that anybody interested in some of our graduating seniors pick up a copy of Friday's paper this coming Friday. There's some really great work in there from some of our staff writers who've been spending the past few weeks talking to some athletes like Allie Ford, Chris Sarbaugh, Jenna Ellis, Jackson Barney, just some good pieces of work, and I'm really excited to see how that turns out. So be sure to check that out if you're interested. But yeah, that's about it for our program today. Luis, any last words?
Well, it is the first day of May, and it's also 63-degree weather. I'm hoping that we do have a three conference championships in one day. I'm hoping that does happen. And as far as NBA uniforms, especially Oklahoma's, it's basketball, not a soccer game. I don't know what the notice of the uniforms. It's going to be a weird generation as far as uniforms down the stretch. That's pretty much all I got to say. But that's for another day as far as NBA uniforms.
Well, we'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. This has been Fourth and Downtown on KUOI 89.3 FM Moscow. Enjoy your week. We will be back here. It'll be our final show of the semester on Friday. I believe that will start at 3:30. If not, we will start a half hour earlier. But we want to thank you guys for tuning in and for your support for the rest of the semester. We will be back in the fall, though. That schedule has yet to be set, so be checking our Facebook and Twitter pages for updates on that as far as that is concerned. And also you can check out some of our previous broadcasts on our website, www.thevandalnation.com, and you can hear some of our takes on some of the biggest moments from sports. I feel like our final program, we're just going to really talk about the biggest events of the year. So
yeah, and also a final update as far as the championship conferences. So I got to give you an update of what's going on for those who are wondering. Those who are not social media savvy, we'll make sure to give you results of those 3 championship tournaments on our program.
Yep. So thank you guys for tuning in. This is Fourth and Downtown. Have a safe week, everybody.